Hi, I'm Brews News Editor Matt Kirkegaard, and welcome to this very special beer sensory experience. To celebrate their proprietary hops brand refresh, HPA teamed up with Beer Cartel and a host of local breweries to bring you a limited edition 12-pack full of beers featuring each hop inside and out. This was originally a live stream tasting in which I was joined by HPA Sales and Marketing Manager Owen Johnston to talk about each hop, and also by each brewer to discuss the hop and how they used it to create the beer. You can visit HPA's website to get the full recipe for each beer as well. We were also joined by certified Cicerone brewer, beer educator and former cheesemonger Lindsy Greig to talk us through her recommended snack pairings. The program is a great conversation about hops and brewing techniques, beer and snacks. Enjoy. Great to be here. Great to have you along.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for hosting today.
Yeah, thank you.
Always a pleasure. And Lindsay, yes. Sorry, Lindsay, thank you for coming along. Now, OJ, tell us a little bit. I was a little bit surprised when, I got the email saying that HPA is going to rebrand the hops because I guess on one hand, hops are an ingredient, but the way brewers use them, they really do have an individual personality that, is deserving of a brand, isn't it?
Yeah, the origin of the whole variety brand and the evolution of this variety brand, persona that we're pursuing here comes right back to like the why we are here and what are we doing with the Aussie Hop program. So the breeding program at HPA has been running for a long time, since the 50s, and our mission is to continue to present choice and variety in ingredients to brewers to make this diverse and exciting array of flavours that brewers present to the market nowadays. And we realised that the really strong emotional connection that the brewers have with the beers they make, and flows through to the hop varieties that they use. They're effectively in love with the hops. They don't love me. They don't love HPA. They love the hops and they love the beers, the tasty beers that they make, right? And I think that's a fair enough, that's a fair enough statement. So, in trying to harness that diversity and the love of the hops that brewers have, we decided it was only natural then to focus on those hops and really try and bring their differences and their personalities, which part of the difference in each of these hops feeds through to the personality that they express in beer, and so we decided to continue to add colours other than hop green to the hop world, and really try to bring these alive for people and help brewers, celebrate or hero our hop ingredients in their successful beers. So that's why we kicked off with this process of trying to brighten up their personalities.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing how each brewer took the hop and filled the brief of putting them into the beers and onto the can. In the meantime, let's welcome Lindsy Greig. Lindsy, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Now, Lindsy, as a certified Cicerone, you've done the beer and food pairings today. You've come up with some really interesting matches, including cheese, which is a lay down misere for a lot of pairings. Tell us how you approach beer and food pairing. What are the basics that you apply when you come up with pairings like you've done today?
Yeah, well, of course, there's the textbook basics, as with anything. So there's some general guidelines that you should follow. So you have contrast, which an example of that would be sour and salty. Those two flavors contrast, or like bitter and sweet. Those contrast, but those put together can make quite a good pairing. There's also the cut or suppress. That's when what I always think of is when you have a really malt-driven beer with a spicy food to kind of cleanse the spice out, kind of suppress some of that heat and let some more flavors shine through. And there's also enhance and emphasize. So in that same range, IPAs, the bitterness in IPAs tend to turn up heat, so like chili pepper heat. Those are just general rules to follow. With the HPA pairings, what was really fun with this was that they were all very hop-driven beers. And what I personally wanted to do was make sure that the pairing emphasized the hop characteristics. So I was always looking for not necessarily maybe something that was the most incredible pairing, but what was really going to make the hop that was featured really kind of show up. Yeah.
Now, as I take a sip and reveal the glass that I'm using, I'm not a pedant when it comes to beer glasses. You know, I find that the glass that you have is the best glass to use when you're just enjoying beer. But we are tasting, and I do like to go for a wine glass. What's your approach to glassware when you're doing a tasting along the lines of what we're doing today, where we're trying, you know, a variety of beers across the tasting?
Yeah, I mean, generally I think you want something with a rounded shape. So I have two glasses here. Both of these, a stemless one because they're pretty safe. I like wine glasses. If I can't get, like, if all that's being offered is a pint glass, I'll generally go for a wine glass. The wine industry has done really well at marketing, actually tasting and like sniffing the wine and getting all of the aroma out of it, and they've done really well with creating glassware for that and marketing it as well. You wouldn't drink wine out of a pint glass, and I don't think you should drink a beer that you're really trying to get all of the aromatics and flavor from out of a pint glass either.
Yeah, and again, we are at a tasting today. We want to give the best expression and also a consistent expression. So having a similar glass across the tastings, I find, is good for that. But I'm not going to walk into the public beer bar of my local and demand that they serve me a beer in a wine glass, because I'm sure that somebody would say something unkind, and possibly so they should.
It's all set and setting. So pint glasses I drink out of pint glasses, but if I really want to capture aroma, you want that curvature. Like, you want to actually condense and capture the aroma instead of just letting it shoot out everywhere. Yeah.
Now, as we get on with the tasting, Owen, very, very quickly before we introduce Matt Wilson from Moffat Beach, our first brewer, just give us a very quick, HPA talk about the Eclipse, which is the first hop that we're showcasing.
Yeah, so Eclipse is our newest commercial release. We actually featured Eclipse in our very first iteration of this 12-pack through our collaboration with Aussie Brewers and Beer Cartel. So that was a really cool way to get a heap of profile for a new hop out in front of the industry and really set the scene for its success. And it has been really widely taken up. And I tell you what, thanks to Matt and the team up at Moffat Beach, the beers like this have really put Eclipse on the map. And I think its success, or its attributes that really stand out to me, we talk about like general preference and likability. It always attracts a high likability score in blind tastings. We talk about impact in beer, and it always scores really highly, right up there with our other benchmark impact in beer hop, which is of course Galaxy. I always sort of benchmarked Galaxy as a 10 out of 10 impact beer, and I would say Eclipse is a 10, if not more. And certainly recently I've seen as brewers are harnessing Eclipse more and getting more experience with bringing it forward. I've certainly seen Eclipse standing up really well, even in mixes, in hop blends with Galaxy. So the other thing that I think brewers appreciate is the ease of use and a hop that does what it says on the label. And if it headlines, high impact, high preference, and a clear Mandarin profile, and it delivers all three of those, what else do you need? It's a really exciting hop for us. We've still got a really rapid trajectory of bringing on production on farm. We're heading out to just shy of 200 tonnes, already in the ground, hard baked into the production plans. So there's a really bright future for this. It's a hop that you can back, and we are certainly backing really strongly. And so far with the beers that I've seen with Eclipse, including these next couple, it's got a bright future.
Well, as a hop that does what it says on the can, let's see what it does in the can, and introduce Matty Wilson from Moffat Beach. Matty, welcome to the tasting today.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Mate, tell us about the Shadow of the Moon that I've got in front of me. Tell us what was your thinking when you came up with the strong pale ale?
Look, I'll be perfectly honest. I can't take all the credit for this beer. We originally brewed this in collaboration with HPA for BrewCon, which was supposed to be on the Sunshine Coast. So Sim Benetti, who formerly was head brewer at Newstead, now working for HBA. He and I worked on the recipe together, and he came up and brewed the beer with me. And we were just absolutely stoked with how it's come out. So we wanted to have a pretty sort of light malt build just to let those hops shine. So we've got in it just a mixture of Pilsner malt and some ale malt, a little bit of Vienna, and then we just got some Gladiator and some wheat and just a touch of toffee malt just to just give it a bit of a base. All Eclipse at the start, just a small bittering charge, and then we don't add any more hops until the Whirlpool stage, and we give it a really, really big charge there. And then, we ferment it pretty clean, 19 degrees, and just the one charge in the dry hops, so we don't do anything silly with double dry hops or triple dry hops or biotransformation. We just wanted this to be a classic sort of American style pale ale, strong one. We just give it a decent charge, but just the one, and then we just nice big long chill, and then we package it. So, but from this beer I get lots of. Sorry, what was that, Matt?
No, you go.
No, from the beer, I get lots of I get a real pithiness from it. And some pine needle, but that real massive big citrus hit from it. From day one, it's been really popular in both of our venues. And it's not core range, but it's semi-core range. We now bring it out biannually. So we bring it out in spring and autumn, and it's just been really popular, both in pack and in keg.
When you're developing a new beer, how do you go about selecting a hop like this? What is your thinking in approaching the hop selection?
Well, for this beer, HBO approached me, so and I'm glad they did, because it's been such a really great beer for us. We've done well with it in awards and out in trade. But when it comes to selecting hops, I probably just have in my head what I want the beer to taste like, and I don't know. It's I'll just pick what I've got on hand and try different combinations. In our original brewery down on the beach, we were pretty nimble there because it's such a small brew house. So I was able to do different brews, weekly on that little kit. So that probably helped me sort of hone my craft and get a real understanding of what different hops sort of taste like and what characteristics that they have. So I got a pretty good grasp on that. I don't know. I'll sit down and an idea will come into my head and I'll just put it together, I suppose.
OJ, did you want to throw anything at Matt?
Oh, I've got a few things to say to Matt. Firstly, like mate, the collaboration and your execution of the brief around the first iteration of the Shadow of the Moon for that very first Eclipse mixed pack, it was just stunning. And I have, probably talking to a very sympathetic audience here, but I have some very crystal clear memories when I'm drinking beer and of the beers I drink sometimes. And I just have this really clear picture of drinking this beer the first time I saw it, drinking it and just going, oh, wow. Yes. This is the potential that we can unlock in this hop. So just immense thanks from me, and I know the rest of the team here at HPA. So great job.
No, thanks, mate.
Lindsay, what did you pull out when you first tasted this beer and coming up with your pairing? What was it in the beer that struck you?
Yeah, well, the thing I like about this beer is although it's not an intense malt bill, like a heavy, like it's a lighter malt bill. The sweetness of the malt is still there for support. And I really wanted to find something that was going to like subdue some of that sweetness and like balance it out, but also just emphasize the citrus, the orange citrus, the mandarin, the really, really bright mandarin characters in that. So yeah,
And
I love
tell us what you came up with.
Yeah, so I came up with, well, I paired it with blue cheese, specifically King Island blue. So I think it's important that you do like a creamy cow's milk blue cheese. Not all blue cheeses are created the same. They all have different textures, but King Island blue or like any kind of Australian made blue cheese is typically going to be quite cream forward. What I like about this pairing is that the malt sweetness does cut through the penicillin just a little bit, the kind of like spiciness that you get from the blue cheese, and then the creaminess just kind of enhances and brightens up the mandarin character that's already there. Yeah.
And is there anything else that you can think of that you would pair, or just a nice, because a blue cheese and a nice IPA are just one of those really nice pairings. Is there anything else that you would sub into this one as well?
For Shadow of the Moon, I think it would be really nice to probably try it alongside like any kind of cream forward cheese. I didn't try it with any wash rinds, but I'd be interested to see where that goes just for funsies. So like a Taleggio or something. I had it with a goat's cheese and I had it with a hobnob. But for these pairings, the blue cheese just kind of fit right in. And it because of its hint of sweetness, for me, it was the only one that really went well with the blue.
And we will hear about hobnobs and Eclipse in not too long. Have you tried it with blue cheese, Matt?
I haven't, but I probably will tonight when I get home.
Head to the shops. We've inspired you to come up with a pairing.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that match actually really does make sense to me as well. So yeah, no, I'll be giving that a crack. I'll pop into the shops on the way home. I'll grab some of that King Island stuff and give it a crack.
Yeah.
And does Eclipse feature in any of your other core range beers, Matt?
Not in the core range, but we try and do special release beers. Probably 2 a month that we pump out, and it does feature in those. We've got a new beer coming out over summer, which we've sort of designed for the summer weather, which will be actually featuring Eclipse and Galaxy. I really think those two will go really well together. But yeah, this beer will be a sort of 4.5%, similar to our summer ale in body, but yeah, different hopping, maybe a little bit cloudier. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how that one goes as well.
Oh, well, Matt, thank you very much for joining us and talking us through Shadows of the Moon featuring Eclipse.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks HPA. Cheers.
Congratulations. Now, speaking of hobnobs, we're going to, as we get Max Hammerly from Filter joining us very shortly, maybe you can tell us about the hobnobs, Lindsay. It's actually not a biscuit that I'm terribly familiar with.
Me neither. I did not grow up with these. I'm American. I'd never had one before. I've had digestives, like the dark chocolate digestives. Those are my shit bomb. Great. Those are my favorite thing. One of my favorite things. Sorry. But yeah, the hobnob. So what was so interesting about the hobnobs with actually a lot of these beers was I did find that they just offered more support to bring out so many more fruit characteristics. And I think that was especially true in the filter beer. Another thing I did with these pairings was try not to put something that was featuring the same hop with like a savory with a savory, like do everything Eclipse with all cheeses. I wanted to really do it, like balance it all out a little bit. So it's kind of fun to taste the hobnobs with the filter, but you should also taste it with other beers, and same with the blue cheese. But they offer the oats and the mouthfeel and the support and a little bit of sweetness that just kind of allows more fruity characters to shine through. They're fun. Sorry, tangent.
Was the haze and the oats a bit of a hook as well? The richness of the hazy beer?
Yeah, with this one, it turns more into like, I mean, I don't want to say milkshake IPA. It's just like the fullness really is just a good time. It just transforms the beer because you do have the oats. And I think that's some of the other beers in this with the lighter malt characteristics that aren't as like full bodied. I mean, hazy IPAs are popular for a reason. So I think hobnobs are kind of just like giving that hazy IPA vibe, maybe. Like body and oats and sweetness, yeah. Time.
Well, let's hear a little bit about the hazy, the Eclipse Hazy IPA with Max Hemley. Welcome, Max.
Hello, everyone. How are you going?
Good, mate. Talk us through the Hazy IPA.
Yes, of course. Pretty keen on doing that. Sorry, I'm obviously the one with the silly accent, as you know. Basically, so we had already, because you obviously all know our hazy IPA, the haze, and we had like a already quite solid base, kind of like of a very big mouthfeel, hoppy and malty character with a little bit of caramel in it. I slightly modified the grain bill a little bit, and I was like, okay, so obviously HPA gives us quite a big amount of Eclipse hops to play around with. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go full on. I'm just going to change the grain bill a little bit, make it a bit more malty with some Vienna malt and stuff, give it a bit more caramel touch. So the citrus of the Eclipse is not going to be overpowering. Still wanted to go quite hard. So obviously put already, not obviously, sorry, but I put a lot of Eclipse hops already in the whirlpool, and then I even played around with active ferment hops to, obviously give a bit more like different kind of biochemical processes to, even get a bit more out of the alpha acid out still in the active ferment hops. Obviously not as much anymore, but you get like slightly different flavors out of the hops when you do active ferment hops. And then went pretty hard on the dry hop. So I think in balance with a little bit of mosaic to get like this sweet mandarin, zesty citrus from the Eclipse, good like a backbone with the kind of like the relative lime and a little bit of passion fruit to it. So kind of paired Eclipse and mosaic, obviously a lot more Eclipse than mosaic. Just kind of gave a really good balance, and I think there is a really, really nice big amount of citrusy flavor in it with a little bit of a touch support from the mosaic hops. And so far, so when it got released, the feedback of it is really good. So I think credits to my brewers, by the way. I'm just doing the recipes. They brew it these days. I'm not brewing that much anymore. But they did an absolutely incredibly good job. That's down.
OJ, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Max, agree with your description of the hop profile there, and I think it's really cool to see these two Eclipse beers back to back, because we all know that what you do in the brewery matters, and I'm not just talking about 1,000 things that contribute to making a good beer. How you set yourself up to express a hop profile can bring out different elements of that personality that hop can bring. And I think Eclipse is no different. Earlier I've said that it's, kind of does what it says on the label. And I think that's borne out in this. I still get the mandarin. I still get some of the sharper, pithy notes. And yet it is, so it's sort of birds of a feather, but it is different to the Shadow of the Moon. So I really like that. I I'm a huge advocate for those subtleties and the skill in bringing out the hop expression that you want to see in a beer. So 100% agree with Max's description of how that hop profile has been brought forward. Sounds like you've thrown every technique and trick in the book at it to bring it on. So that's fascinating to hear as well. So thanks for sharing that.
I was going to note that, Max, is a hop, or is the way that you use it, does that bring out different shades of those flavors? And how do you decide how to use it?
Yeah, totally. So when you, I don't know how familiar you are specifically, but the earlier the hops you put in, the more different the outcome is, except from like first word hops because it's not boiling yet. But when you put in boil hops, for example, you get more alpha acid out of the hops. So not so much the flavor, not so much the aroma, more like the bitterness, the lupulin in it. Then whirlpool a little later, more like aroma profile. A little bit of flavor, more like aroma, less alpha acid, but more of the character of the hops. And yeah, so I wanted to get a subtle bitterness while it's still an IPA, so not too overpowering. So I only used whirlpool hops, but quite a lot. So to get like an early whirlpool addition to still get enough alpha acid out of it to get a good bitterness, but to bring the aroma and a little bit the flavor of the Eclipse hops in the foreground already. And once it went to the cellar, into the tank, so we from day one there's active ferment hops going in. So as I said before, probably was a bit too quick on that. With the active ferment hops, you have a few different biochemical processes that still play around a little bit with the alpha acids. Not much, but when it reacts with the yeast does different things with the hops. It brings specific flavors out more. Some flavors are kind of like still a little bit in the background, but it kind of my go on that was I tried to get as much out as I can from the Eclipse hops in different areas. And then obviously at the end with the dry hop, where you get like the full aroma and the full flavor out of the Eclipse, and like close to zero alpha acid conversion. The full spectrum from whirlpool to dry hop and anything in between, to kind of play around with these kind of hops as much as I can.
Oh, yeah. Mate, congratulations on the beer. You've really shown us a different expression of the hop than the one that we tasted just before, the Shadows of the Moon, and really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to HPA.
OJ, we're moving on to Ella now. Do you want to just give us the quick rundown on Ella?
Ella's an excellent beer to just follow on from, excellent hop to follow on from Max's comments about how different addition points and different techniques manifest different flavors. Ella is probably the best example in our current stable of varieties between a hot side addition where it experiences some boil versus the characters you get out of dry hop alone. Ella's got quite a complement of a category of compound called sesquiterpenes. Throw them in the boil, give them 5 minutes of boil time, and those sesquiterpenes oxidize and have been proven to drive this spicy element that hops can bring in. So, if you did a single hop beer in a light malt base just with Ella, with a short hot side addition before the whirlpool, so actual active boil, you can drive a really beautiful spice profile from Ella. If you throw it in the cold side and dry hop with it, you get that fruit forward expression of Ella. So I'd say Ella has has a really varied and wide application, and you need to be cognizant of what flavour outcome you're trying to achieve with it.
Well, how about we hear how Hawker's used it, and we'll introduce Zachary Fernside, Hawker's head brewer. Zachary, welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. So Ella's a bit of an interesting hop. I think pretty well in the industry, it's always been known as a bit of a supportive hop. So it's something you sort of lay the canvas of hop down for something else to sort of sing over the top of it, and it does that really well. But we were really excited when sort of faced with the I won't say the challenge, but for us the different use of what we would normally use it for. So we decided to even just go, well, let's turn the tables a little bit here and use a bit of a pairing. So we decided to use Galaxy as the support and push Ella forward as the star. So normally I certainly get the spice from Ella and certainly a little bit of floral. But in these higher concentrations that we use them in, with the Galaxy underpinning as well, we ended up just getting this super duper like sherbety, creamy, tin pineapple, mango character. And it translated really well from the aroma to the palate as well. So yeah, we were actually really impressed with the result. With the beer we made, we upped the BU a little bit because it is a double IPA, and you know, while we want our hazies kind of on the sweeter side, you also want to understand that, I mean, I suppose the higher alcohol is going to give more sweetness again. So we bid it higher than we normally would on a beer such as this, and we think it's been contained really well, the sweetness. And yeah, basically, probably never really going to look at Ella again as a supportive hop because we can use it in a couple of different ways. So she's actually a lot more versatile than probably I used to think she was.
Yeah. What other uses do you think you would put it to?
Well, I think we would probably start using Ella to dry hop a little bit more, and in those higher concentrations, get like I said, I got a really tin pineapple mango-y character on the aroma. So, like from my perspective, I mean, it's funny because we paired it with Galaxy, which, I mean, you know, it's always the typical tin fruit salad kind of character. But with this, I was like, well, it's a different tropical fruit. Like, it's like overripe mango, like really nice and in your face, and kind of nearly like a mango lassi in this style of beer as well. Like, yeah, sort of just, yeah, that really nice sweet sherbet mango character. Then you've got sort of that tin pineapple sweetness, and it's translated just really easily through the palate because it is a thicker, sweeter beer. And then the bitterness just sort of chops it off and kind of go, oh, I want a little bit more of that tropical fruit character. So I think we would start using it more in a beer that we wanted to achieve that tropical fruit character, nearly as a point of difference to the standard ways of getting there.
Lindsay, what did you pull out of the double hazy IPA?
Yeah, so I still get a lot of old world spice on the aroma, like just like a red pepper. And there's definitely, like, the mango makes a lot of sense. I also get like a lemon lolly kind of vibe coming through on it. I paired this with a mild salami mainly to kind of intensify this like white kind of spice, and also to emphasize some of the fruit notes that I was coming through. I found that just a mild salami was really a good time. A little bit more floral notes came through for me when I did it with that. And yeah, just it emphasized the sweet lolly characteristics.
Would it work with a spicy salami, do you think?
No, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, sorry. In my notes, I paired it with the spicy salami. I do have all my notes. I tried it with a regular salami and I tried it with a spicy salami, and my note was no. It just it brought out an aggressive bitterness that isn't actually there in the beer. So yeah, that didn't work for me.
And that is the challenge with pairing with hops, isn't it? You don't want to amplify that bitterness on a beer like this that really showcases the fruit.
Yeah, and you want to bring out the quality that you're trying to find, right? You want to find, like, you can try this with a hobnob. You can also try this with the blue cheese, and see, like, you have to play around and experiment with this. I tried this with 3 different things, and for me, I think the mild salami was what really showcased what wasn't right there at the forefront, but brought more out.
When I do tastings, I'll often find that having the couple of beers ahead in front of me and the pairings, I've got my preferred pairings, but then almost bracketing them with each other. You learn a lot more about the expression of the hops and also the pairings when you do find that slightly jarring note when it is you also have the same beer that complements something.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you have really bad pairings as well, right? Like you need to try this with spicy salami so that you know what doesn't work, and then try to figure that out for yourself.
You enjoy the good, but you learn more from the bad. Is that what you're saying?
You learn more from the bad. Yeah, I love a bad pairing.
Max, what would you have this with? Zachary, what would you have this with?
Oh, I think the thing that I saw was on your notes, something about like a calamari roll or something. I was recently up north and we were eating Moreton Bay bug rolls, and I just thought go really well with a Moreton Bay bug roll.
Look,
you've got to pay
as
that.
if it doesn't. Most
things do go well.
Bug roll with the beer. And so what's have you got any ideas for when you're next going to use Ella? Have you got one on the drawing board yet?
Not as yet, but we're always sort of cycling hops through our core range in smaller amounts, and basically when we find something we really like, we like to find a home for it. So we've started thinking about it maybe sneaking into our core range, but yeah, I think it's more just knowing it's there when we need it at this point.
OJ, what did you think?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts about the beer, and Zachary's description of the purpose and how they use it and stuff was really informative. I really like, first of all, the versatility of Ella and seeing it stand up in a pairing with Galaxy is really pleasing. Like, it's really nice to see it actually not be in that supportive role. And I think it's got that reputation for a supporting hop because it's one of the few that brings that nice layering of complementary spice under, say, a fruit forward profile. So to see that actually flipped on its head and the fruit profile of Ella heroed, that's really cool. And sort of secondary to that, in somewhat not hop related in the aroma sense, but the role of the bitterness in this beer is super important. You know, with higher ABV, you know, they can come across with some slickness, and you get this cascading effect of you need some residual sugar to carry that booze. The booze itself is a bit slick. If this was down in the mid-teens on BUs, it wouldn't be right. And so I think you're absolutely bang on, and we can't forget about bitterness when we're talking about hops, really. I think your choice there to sit that BU a bit higher than you might have otherwise by style was excellent and well thought through. Great job.
Awesome. I will probably give a bit of a shout out to the team as well, because all of these things are a discussion and sort of a group effort.
Oh, I'm glad we've got so many growing teams that are watching this and enjoying these pairings at the same time, given that there's a lot of sharing of acclaim from their head brewers. Zachary, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on the Downside Up Hazy Double IPA featuring Ella that we've got to taste today. OJ, just out of interest, before we introduce Alana Rees, the head brewer from Mountain Goat, a question with that notice: when did Ella first come to market?
I'm off mute. Yeah, it's that was about 2015. So we've been talking about Ella for quite some time. It was one of the if you go back far enough, we had a first generation of modern sort of flavour orientated hops, and they were a bit more like the European spin-offs. We had Helga and Summer, and every time I mention Summer, I'm going to get like pecked by people who love that hop and they can't get it anymore. Sorry about that, everybody. But the second wave of our modern releases from the program included, Vic Secret and Ella. Galaxy was 2009, so it's kind of back there as well. So it's a stayer for us, and it's found some really good homes, and in its versatile application. And not every hop has to be a hero, and some of those platitudes around this hop. It's been a really important piece of diversity in our approach to providing choice through these hops.
And we might bring Alana in now, because it's interesting. We've reached the stage in the craft beer movement that breweries are older than the hops that they're using. Given those 2015, we're seeing breweries that are much, much older than the hops they're using. And are you there with us, Alana?
I'm not sure if Alana's joining us today. I've got some comments from her.
Okay, maybe you can talk us through that.
So we took her down the same path as our line of questioning for the other brewers who have joined us already. So questions like, what was your approach, your favourite thing about this beer? So she's given us some comments. I'll just read them out. So what was your approach to designing the recipe for this beer? And she says here, trying to get the malt bill as close to what a traditional hef would be without getting it stuck in our lauter tun, and something I'm sure that's close to everyone's heart who's made one of these things. Traditionals ask for 70 to 50% wheat. So we've opted for 60% Pilsner, 40% wheat with some rice hulls, and they would be happy to brew this beer again, which is pleasing to hear. So as we know, when brewing a traditional hef, the use of classic yeast producing the phenolic banana esters is a must. You either love them or hate them. Personally, I love them, and German wheats were some of my first international beers I explored and fell in love with. So much so, I made the trek to Weinstefan to visit the brewery and have a drink in the mother of all breweries. I was not disappointed, and I highly recommend the cultural experience. What was your favourite thing about this beer? It'd have to be how the banana and tropical blend nicely, making it a pretty Moorish beer, almost dessert-like. Plus, look at that sick label.
OJ, I have to say that this is one of the ones I can't sample, because in the lead up, I couldn't taste all of them, but this was one of the ones I went to because, like Alana, huge fan of the traditional Hefeweizen, and I love the way that hops like Ella can really add that additional tropical fruit note to the classic ester. Lindsay, how about you? What was your thinking when you came to this one?
Yeah, what I loved about this beer was like the phenolics are still there. They're not overpowering, which I think it's really cool. So the banana clove kind of phenolics, they're still there, but they're not going to dominate the beer. I got a lot of like comparing. What I love about this pack is side by side with the Hawkers. The characteristics of Ella were quite a bit different for me on this one. I got a lot more like peach kind of notes coming through. And just a little bit of pine too. Like it's a different experience. I paired this one with lemon bars. Really just, I think this is going to be like the standard thing I say for all of these. I'm just trying to latch on to whatever character I'm getting from the hop and see whatever intensifies that. And for me, what was fun with the lemon bars was, one in the States, I'm American, obviously. We always have a slice of lemon with our wheat beers, which I know is like sacrilege for some, but that's how I grew up. So it does add like a citrus zing, but it still like lifts and elevates the other characteristics coming out, like fruit, like the peach got a little bit more intensified. The pine was a little more apparent in it. And then just a hint of the spicy thing going on. Yeah. The bitterness kind of balanced out as well with the lemon zing. It was really good.
Oh, look, I'm absolutely going to give you a pass if you want to put a lemon slice in it. I think of, what is it, Schofferhofer do a grapefruit wheat beer. OJ shaking his head. It's it's
because
how you enjoy your beer.
Shock Top is such a great Hefeweizen. You're like, what are you guys talking about? Alana's paid respects, paid homage to Von Stefan, and here you are debasing the whole reputation of this wonderful beer.
It's like a pairing. It is a pairing, you know? Lemon is a food. It's a pairing. Sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yep. No. There is no right way to enjoy your beer, and it exactly is a pairing. So, is there anything else? Because some of the traditional, if I think of a classic wheat beer, Lindsay, I'll often pair that with pan-seared scallops or something like that, because then you get that sort of slight oily, and the richness of the Hefeweizen works very nicely there, or even some goat's cheeses. With the addition of the hops, I can remember just getting a slight hoppy bitterness that I wouldn't get in a traditional wheat beer out of this one, that I feel could be amplified with the wrong pairing. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why the lemon bar, the zing of the lemon bar, the strong lemon, like citrus rind zing, kind of like assists the bitterness. The bitterness stays there, but it has something to kind of match it at the same time. And I think that's why that worked for me. I also did this with the goat's cheese, and it was like, what I found was it just kind of, the bitterness was a little too much for the goat's cheese for me on this one.
OJ, do you think there is enough use of the fruit characters of hops with the phenolic ester of things like wheat beers? Because I remember last year with the Eclipse pack, my favorite what was the Saison, that I think was from New England Brewing. They did a hoppy Saison.
Yeah. Yep.
And there was just something about the phenolics of that and the fruitiness that I just thought was sensational.
Yeah, and I think these are really tough to execute, and the pitfalls for me are that if you get if your phenolics become grippy and then you add elevated hop bitterness, and you get this compounding of perceived bitterness, and your beer will go out of balance. One of the things I like about this beer, like forgetting about the aromatic profiles and the merits of lemon, we can I think this additional dryness and BUs in this beer take it into, for me, a really drinkable window where some hefts, especially this one's finishing, their generous provision of their recipes here, this one's finishing around 3.5 Plato. So, I think a hef is starting to risk of being quite flabby at that point, reducing its drinkability. So I think they've walked a really tight line on this one. And the hop contribution to the overall balance and drinkability and appeal of this beer is again, for me, it's really spot on. I think the hop flavour, the complement of the hop flavour on the palate is present but not overpowering. It hasn't. I think in a hoppy wheat, a blend of two styles, you can risk sort of swamping the traditional style with this new iteration, and I think this is quite nicely restrained and balanced.
No, I thought it was a lovely beer. Again, wheat beers aren't everyone's cup of tea, but it was certainly find its way into my cup. Now, moving on, maybe OJ, you can tell us a little bit about. We're moving on to our next featured hop, and that's Enigma. Still in the E's.
Yeah, so Enigma is another one of our new range of flavour forward hops. A really distinctive hop, quite a high impact hop, somewhat polarizing, I think. And let's not be under any sort of misconceptions that every hop HPA releases needs to be the same as Galaxy or anything like that. There has to be diversity in our lineup, and I think in these first three hops we've already seen this immense array. By the time we get into Enigma, we've seen a diversity of hop flavour that's really quite powerful as building blocks to drive flavour in beer. Enigma's, I think Enigma's probably as identifiable in finished beer as Galaxy and Eclipse for that matter. when we progress this through the breeding program and through tastings and work with brewers to make that tough decision to commercialise it, it was still a bit of an enigma. We could see it expressed differently, quite wildly differently in different people's use of it. And so we're like, what is this hop? What does it do? I like it, but I can't quite pin it down. So it was a bit of an enigma, and that name just stuck. So yeah, it's been on the market a while now, and I think people in Australia in particular would be more familiar with it than the sort of export markets that we sell a bit of hop into. So I look forward to the pairing on this one.
Well, let's introduce Tom Wood, head brewer at Mismatch. G'day, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. Good to see you again, Matt and OJ and Lindsay. How are you all?
Very well, mate. Speaking of enigma, OJ was just saying how the hop was a bit of an enigma. You've put this into a lager, an India Pale lager. You're the first lager on the board for today. Talk us through your choice of enigma for that.
So I guess Enigma has been, as OJ sort of alluded to, it's been a bit of a polarizing hop for me as well. And so to cop it was actually pretty good because I had to think a little bit about where to use it. And I think Mismatch already is known for doing a pretty good lager. And I thought it would be fun to build from that sort of pedigree we have here and try doing something a little bit more hop forward in the lager category than we're probably used to doing.
And how did you approach the delivery of it in the IPL?
So I think I think Enigma in the past, when I've had it, has been able to come across a little one-dimensional in terms of being aroma dominant and struggling to sort of get some structure into it. So we used it in the whirlpool as well as in the dry hop, which I think really helped give the beer a little bit of complexity, and also with a massive alpha in it, helped us deliver a little bit of bitterness using the whirlpool rather than having to put a kettle bittering addition in. And so really just trying to layer up those hops throughout the hot side as well as the dry hop to try and deliver something with a bit of layer and a bit of complexity to it was sort of how I tackled it.
Lindsay, I actually thought that a lager like that crisp lager base really showcased so many levels of flavour from this hop, and you've come up with a really interesting match for this one.
Yeah, this one was actually one that really gave me a runaround. So I did the pairings over 2 days. It was a bit of a quick turnaround. And when so how I kind of do my pairings is I always have like two things based on information that the recipe has given me, information that the brewers have given me, ABVs, all of that. I kind of will do two things that I think will go with the beer, and nothing was really working out how I thought it would. And it was really frustrating because I really liked the beer, but everything was just kind of falling flat. Too much bitterness would be emphasized, or like all the flavors would just kind of die. So I actually went to the shop and I was like, iced Vovos, I think will be a really good time with this. And they were. It was shocking. It does, even though the light malt bill in this, it being a lager, really nice, clean flavor profiles with emphasis on the hop. I still felt with food, with a lot of snacks, I still needed some body in there. And that's why everything was kind of falling flat. So the Iced Vovo supports that. Iced Vovo has a little bit of acidity, and it has this raspberry thing going on, which once again is just matching flavors and things that you can get from Enigma hops. So like white grape and a lot of kind of like wine-like characters coming off this beer for me. Iced Vovos blew my mind on this. What they're sorry.
I was actually amazed that you knew what an Ice Vovo was. I think I'd have to raid my grandmother's pantry to have one to come up with this pairing.
We did a Ice Vovo beer for Gabs at Stomping Ground. So
I'm really surprised. I think back 20 years ago, and Napstein made a cracking lager that really showcased Nelson Sauvin, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen more use of modern hops in that way. And this beer is really reminiscent of that. The lager really provides a pillow for those hop characters, both the bitterness and that lovely fruitiness to lay over the top. And I think Lindsay described it as winey, and it was very much along those lines for me.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe it's something that our cousins across the ditch do a bit better than us. That harnessing of some of those Nelson and grape-like characters in NZ Lager, over there, showcasing their array of varieties is one of the things I look forward to the most when I'm in the country. Getting some of that goodness. That Napstein beer was another, real register on the mind when that was around and I first tasted that beer. And in terms of a registration on that mind map of what hop flavour can do. So yeah, like I do see the reference there. The other one that is more modern was the Brews single hop. That was really enigma forward and quite a light beer with a whole heap of this white grape punch to it. So it's a really interesting, quite a bit of grip and some drinkability because of the balance between the sweet and bitter, but really clear hop expression in that light beer matrix. So yeah, so maybe a trend that we could go for.
Well, let's push that trend because again, Tom, congratulations. I think considering it's a hop that you may have been reluctant to have selected, having it thrust upon you, you've really come up with a nicely balanced beer here.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Has it inspired you for future uses or to look at it differently in other beers?
Yeah, definitely. I think this time around, especially this year, I got a lot more of that white grape, that white wine character to come through. I remember back when I was up in Bright, Ben at Bridge Road was using it a fair bit, and I got a lot of melon, and that was kind of all I got from it. But given what it's sort of come through in this beer, I think it'd definitely be very tempting to use alongside some other hops and to almost mimic some of that sort of Nelson, New Zealand type hop character. I think I've definitely seen the hop in a different light since using it in this beer than I probably had previously.
Do you like using, a local, hop if you can extract that sort of character?
Yeah, definitely. I think being able to, I've always had quite a good relationship with HPA, and again, being up in Brighton near the hop fields, I have a bit of an affinity there as well. But whenever we can use something that's close to us and grown by people we know, I think it's great to be able to use that ingredient. And when we've got not just Galaxy coming out of Australia, I think it's good to be able to play with some of those other hop varieties that are able to deliver so many different characters to the beer.
Oh, congratulations! I'll certainly. This is, it's a sort of beer that I really enjoy. So I'm going to be seeking out some more of it. So congratulations and thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thanks all.
OJ, I'm looking forward to speaking to Dave Huff from Urbanaut about their Bermuda Triangle Brut Double IPA, because having just had a lager, a Brut IPA is probably the closest I can think of in the ale world to a something that has a similar effect as that lager, that dry light body.
I've got some bad news for you. He's just had to cancel last minute. I just got a text message saying that he's had to bail. He can't make it. But the good news is we can still talk about his beer because, Matt, I was just refreshing myself about what the hell were brewers trying to achieve with the Brut IPA, and you know what was top of the Google search list? An article published by your good self. An article published by your good self, 20th of October 2020, and it was titled "The Rise and Fall of Brut IPA." So subject matter expert Matt, can I just pitch this back to you? What is it? What is the spiritual intent of the Brut IPA, please?
Well, that's funnily enough, that is exactly what we should try and find a link to that because I remember doing that article because I'm trying to think of the brewer's name offhand because I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can.
John Hull.
Well, John Hull was the journalist who wrote about it, but I'm trying to think of the brewer. but it was again in the great experimentalization of experimentalism of the IPA world. He was looking at a different approach, so he came up with this idea of using a lighter bodied IPA that really showcased the hops, and he became very, very popular, and it was almost a champagne featuring hops. Then very quickly other people started doing it, and the style didn't even get the chance to find any form of stability before people started pulling in all different directions. So it came and went very, very quickly. But for me, it's very hard to read about a beer from a distance without having tasted it and interpret what the brewer's intent was. But the ones that I did try and the ones I read about, the one from Urbanaut really does showcase that. It's a very dry, and it happens to be one of the ones that I had open, wanting to listen taste it as the brewer talked through for exactly that reason. It's a style that came and went very quickly, and this is what I anticipate a brewed IPA would have been, that full alcohol, but the dry body that becomes a really lovely pedestal upon which some of the best characters of hops can come from. Lindsay, what do you think?
Oh, I love this beer. I thought the aroma on this really just blew me away. It absolutely blew my mind. I remember brewed IPAs. I remember those days. And they were so short-lived, and I feel like it's a similar thing with cold IPAs at the moment. But I think the idea behind the style was really in contrast to, hazies and like milkshakes even, to do something just really nice and dry and hop focused and refreshing. This beer is absolutely incredible, and surprisingly enough, it pairs really well with a granola bar. Uncle Toby's mixed berry bar just becomes this absolute berry bomb. I think the bar adds, once again, just a little bit of oats and a little bit more sweetness and a little bit of body that the beer doesn't necessarily need, but it does help elevate everything. The aroma on this beer blew my mind. I can smell it for days.
I don't have that pairing in front of me, but I can absolutely see that.
Classic complementary pairing, like it's elevated that the brute element of it's got that savoury, yeasty, bready note, and the oats in it just complement it beautifully and lift the whole package. So well done.
Yes. Hobnobs would
Kim
probably.
Sturdivant,
Not spicy salami.
You love your hobnobs. I was actually thinking the fruit in the oat bar might have been a really nice pairing, nice complement as well.
Yeah, it is. It's just a really good time. Everything just blends in. It's one of those pairings where you don't know where one thing starts and the other thing begins. And I love that kind of pairing where you're just like, wait, what is the beer? What's the Uncle Toby's fruit bar? Such a good time.
Was it fun? Because we often think of beer and food matching, particularly when it is brought to us from the world of wine and food, that it has to be white tablecloth, formal tastings. Was it fun to come up with things that weren't, the wings, burgers, ribs of modern brew pubs, but is still casual and unpretentious foods to pair with?
Yeah, I mean, this is, so with HPA, they do featured beers. I've done it for them twice now, where their featured beers on their websites will be paired with snacks. And the idea behind it is really just that you can have incredible beers, but you don't have to make pairings inaccessible. Pairings, like having a really incredible beer and food experience, doesn't have to be isolated to a restaurant with white tablecloths and a meal prepared by a chef. You can go down to the petrol station, if you will, and grab something off the shelf, and you can actually have an incredible pairing. Your kids' granola bars, whatever they take in their lunch, try that with a beer. It doesn't have to be this big thing, and it can be just as magical. I love doing this. That answers the question.
Because it's quite terrifying. The world of wine, and I think we've all experienced it. There is the one person who knows wine, or the cravat-wearing wine expert who wants to tell you that it's got to be this particular blue cheese or this particular, and it almost puts casual pairing out of reach for most people because they think that there are hard and fast rules. But the pairings you presented today seem to encourage trial and experimentation, which choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and make it accessible. And I think that it's, maybe for breweries that don't have tap rooms, it's something you could probably implement. Provide some snacks, or like who don't have like a restaurant on site, like maybe provide a snack or offer a snack to pair with your beer. It doesn't have to be this whole thing. You don't need a kitchen to give people that experience, and it really can elevate and help people think a little bit more about what they're drinking and tasting.
And for those who are following at home, Kim Sturdivant was the name that I was looking at. He was from the kitchen. I'm trying to think of the name of the brewery, but yeah, so he was the inspiration behind the brewed IPA, and it very quickly got debauched to the style guidelines said it could go as high as 9%, but he insists that much above 6.5%, you start getting sweetness from the flavour of the alcohol, which takes away from the dryness of what he was hoping to achieve. And one of the first iterations of the style in Australia was from Wolf of the Willows. So that was that's the brewed IPA style. So it was OJ sorry.
If people want to, for those listening along in the brewery or at home, you can head to the hops.com.au website and actually find the recipes that the brewers have shared with us about these. So if you want to take a deep dive, this one's quite an interesting recipe, and I just love reading around and saying, target finishing gravity 0. Love it. It's a huge malt bill and an obscene amount of hops. I'm not recommending dosages like this in every sort of beer, but this one works. Go for it.
I have to say, OJ, I was really disappointed that of all of the emerging beer styles that have come and gone very quickly, and it's great to see the experimentation and the enthusiasm in the drinking public for a whole range of different beers. But this is one that I actually thought might have had some legs because it was a lovely, subtle flavor expression of hops. It wasn't, the high IBUs that we've seen. It wasn't the really juicy hop flavors. Everything was balanced and everything was subtle, but it had this really wonderful overwhelming impression for me. What did you think about the brewed IPA style?
I'm a bit of a classicist as a brewer, and I might have roundly slammed it when I was a different person running my own brewery, focused laser sharp on stylistic endeavours. And
Yep.
But now that I'm a reformed stylist, I can actually see, especially when it's juxtaposed with beers like these juicies and hazies that are coming out now. This and your description of that original intent behind this recipe, because I remember the original ones being like having that bone dry and champagne like savouriness and those bready yeasty notes more to the fore, and so that makes more sense to me as to where this style potentially should have lain, and that makes sense in my mindscape of what beers are supposed to represent on this continuum of flavour and colour. So I kind of feel like today I understand it a bit better than when it was actually trending. So my loss.
Again, for me, it was a beer that really showed the flavour of hops, not just the bitterness and the aroma of hops in that expression. But then again, maybe it'll come back, and with beers like this, I think can certainly help give that a push. Now, moving on to the next hop. Now, Galaxy, a newcomer to the scene. Not many people might have heard of this one, OJ.
All I can say is thank God we've got Galaxy. Hey, that really changed the course of HPA and proved unequivocally to our leadership and our shareholders that we could potentially decouple ourselves from commodity alpha and growing hops for bitterness. I can't underestimate, and all jokes aside, Galaxy is a phenomenal hop. It's done life-changing things for this company and the and the outlook for Aussie hops in general. It's put renewed impetus and momentum behind the Aussie breeding program, and has literally allowed us to come to market with a hop like Eclipse in 2020. This is still really traceable back to the cause and effect of Galaxy's impact. Preference and taste is always subjective, and I know people who just don't like Galaxy. They just don't like it. But they're the outliers, I say.
Could that be a little bit, we hate it when our favourite band becomes popular and everyone else likes it?
Possibly. yeah. So
with coriander, I can appreciate that there's a genetic component to that some people have a gene that just turns them off. But I can't really imagine anyone hating, given it's part of that pantheon of flavours that we love from hops generally, and particularly hop forward beers. But a man who can probably tell us a little bit about that is Big Shed's head brewer, Ben Johnson. Do we have Ben? G'day, Ben. Thank you for joining us. What was the first time? Can you remember the first time you tried a beer with Galaxy hops in it?
Well, probably Stone and Wood, I guess, is the one that the Pacific Ale was one from the old days that everyone knows. That was a beer that I was drinking very heavily when it first arrived on the scene. And I was sort of homebrewing back in those days, and actually made a single hop Galaxy IPA. And that's kind of where this beer came from, because there were sort of things that came out of Galaxy that I hadn't smelt or tasted before, so that kind of inspired this beer. So we've been sort of playing around with old school IPAs of late with a few beers we've made, going back to the those sort of era beers. When everyone was sort of chasing big bitterness and just big old punchy IPAs, heavy stone fruit, and I sort of thought let's just go back to that again.
I would have been surprised if you'd said any beer other than Stonewood Pacific Ale as the first beer that you tried Galaxy, because it was really the beer that picked Galaxy up and showed it off. But what other characters did you find in it when you put it in a beer like the IPA?
We use Galaxy in a few of our beers quite regularly, our Boozy Fruit NEPA and our Effia American Pale Ale. And, you normally get all those big pineapple, passion fruit, stone fruit characters that we all know from Galaxy. But I think if you try and use it in different places throughout the brew process, you get different flavours. And I find, multiple additions through the boil. We did some mash hop with this beer. And I really think you get some really nice melon and floral notes that we don't normally see from Galaxy. So I think that's what makes this beer quite different to what we've made in the past, and quite interesting that if you push Galaxy to the limit everywhere, it's amazing what comes out of it.
Does the higher alcohol have any impact on the flavour that you pull out in those bigger IPAs?
Oh, I think it definitely has an impact. I think, you see the difference when you do like a light hazy, a session hazy or a pale ale, and then you go up to a big old triple IPA, you definitely see very different things from hops. This one being at 6%, it's sort of middle of the road. It's got a bit of both. I think it's got that light juiciness. It's also got the real big heavy stone fruit and the citrus, and a bit of orange peel as well I get from this beer. So it really does have a lot to offer across, lots of different ways of making beer.
Lindsay, no iced Vovos here.
No. This got roasted red pepper and dip. And I think it's just the way the sweetness kind of hung out together. The sweetness from the dip needed something that had a bit more, there was a bit of bitterness and some resin coming in. I got a lot of passion fruit soda, like a passion fruit kind of cappy in the aroma. And I just felt that the Galaxy really came into play with the spice. The bitterness wasn't so bad that it emphasized the spice in the capsicum dip. The roasted red peppers are quite sweet. It just kind of gave you a little bit more fruit flavors in the beer, or brought those more to light. Once again, same thing over and over. But yeah, it was really good. Originally, I tried to put this with a creme caramel. It was also quite nice with that, but I felt like the capsicum dip was able to hang out a bit more with some of the resin characters that I found in it as well.
I see what you mean. It almost does have that passiona note on it without being over the top or too overt.
Mm.
I like the way that capsicum hangs around and complements the longevity of the beer palate. That's why we have a professional on the job, because I never would have thought of that. Not in 100 years.
Wait, are you eating that? Are you eating the dip right now, Jay? Oh, okay.
100% commitment
nice.
here. Absolutely 100%. If I'm going to get on the beers this early and at this ABV, I'm going to have some food, or I'm not going to be able to get home.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
No, yeah.
OJ, did Galaxy ever, despite being popularised and celebrated through a beer like Stone and Wood's Pacific Ale, did it also suffer a little bit from that? Just the ubiquity of that beer?
No, far from it. No, far from it. And long live these classic West Coast interpretations. And I've got to say, this is one of my favourites in the whole pack. I think as I travel around, I actually don't see the Pacific Ale emulated as much as you would think. I see much more in the big classic IPA style and strong American pale. I actually don't think that having such a flagship beer has kind of typecast this, or whatever the appropriate word is, that it's only suitable for this style. So, I just want to come back to the generosity of the brewers to provide some recipe insights. This is just hilarious. Have you actually checked out how much hop you put in this beer? It's like every possible addition point. Not only
it's
every
a lot,
possible,
and in a lot of places,
it's
a lot of work for the brewers. So kudos to those guys for doing all that work.
And finished with one of our brand new liquid products, Spectrum, varietal specific Galaxy liquid edition designed for dry hop applications. So, that stuff punches at about a ratio of about 8-1 compared to T90 pellets. And so, it's not only a lot, but then that one's particularly amplified. So congratulations on managing such a high hop dose into such a drinkable beer.
Thank you. Thanks for providing such a versatile hop.
I can already hear OJ's call to action that if you want to emulate a beer like this, maybe start making your calls about contracts, OJ, with the 2023 harvest coming up.
I haven't even got the calculator out to add all those up, but I highly recommend that addition rate in every beer. Give us a call. We can help.
I'll admit, Ben, I haven't looked at the recipe, but hearing that, I'm surprised at the elegance of this beer, because it isn't just a hop bomb. It's not a bitterness bomb. It's not a fruit bomb. There is progression of the flavors that match with the bitterness right across the beer. How have you achieved that?
Yeah, I guess we've probably looked at learnings from lots of different beers we've made and different methods of adding hops during the process. And, we do things pretty hard at Big Shed, so we've certainly found the edges of some limits over the years. So to sort of know how hard you can push something is quite good, especially with something like Galaxy. And I was pretty nervous about how much we were putting into this beer and where we were putting it. I was worried that we were going to come out with that big bitterness that Galaxy can really, throw in there. And it was pretty firm early on in ferment, in maturation. I was like, man, this is pretty firm, but it's just sort of softened off nicely, and I think it's sort of brought a nice balance with it. That it's got that big, punchy, sweet stone fruit character, and the bitterness just kind of, rounds it off and makes it a bit more drinkable. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of learnings in there, and a little bit of risk and a little bit of reward here with this one. So.
Oh, mate, if you were nervous, I'm sure the accountants were even more nervous, given the amount that you've used. But congratulations on the beer. It really is a standout, amongst a really high level pack. So thank you very much for joining us today.
No worries. Thanks for having me, and thanks to HPA for giving us the opportunity, letting us play with your baby in Galaxy.
And speaking of Galaxy, it would be remiss not to go to the brewery that really showcased it and put its name on the map, and that's Stone & Wood. And we're joined by Keelan Vaughan, head brewer at Stone & Wood. G'day, Keelan. Great to see you.
G'day, everyone. How are we?
Mate, Galaxy, tell us about it.
Hang on. Well, where would we be without Galaxy? It's one of those fabulous collaborative partnerships that's just seen the flourishment of like our brewery, and through our successes, we've been able to promote, but also just work with dear friends, the guys down at HPA. It's just a hop that we both absolutely love and adore, and never strive to continually understand more about what makes it tick. We are still playing with Galaxy to understand more about what we like and what we love about it. And it is one of those hops that is just truly unique. It's the Australian icon of the Australian brewing industry and the hop industry. It is just something that is quite special. We're very proud to be showcasing it, obviously in this beer, but in a couple of the beers that we make in the brewery as well.
I was going to ask that. Obviously, the original expression of Galaxy in many ways was the Pacific Ale, but is it a hop that you use through the Stone & Wood range?
Yeah. So obviously, Pacific Ale, was one of the first breweries to commercialise, obviously the use of Galaxy. But it also plays a major part in our other pale ale as Cloudcatcher. So they're the two beers they're the two biggest volume beers, dry hop beers that we currently brew. So it's definitely, and if you ever come to one of our tasting rooms, there's always, whether it's an IPA or some sorts, showcasing at least one of the HPA varietals, always in high rotation.
Now, for this pack, you've used the Galaxy in a Galaxy Strong Hazy Ale. When you use it in a beer like this, is there a challenge to keep it distinct from Pacific Ale? So, to make the beer stand on its own merits whilst using the same hop?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Pacific Ale definitely plays in the more subtle end of the spectrum. Put it in context, pack ale is about 2 grams per litre of dry hopped. I think this was up around the 18 grams per litre of dry hopping. So the level of dry hopping was obviously exponentially bigger, which really allows the passion fruit, the tropical fruit flavors to not just be a light, playing on the more subtle end of the flavor and aroma spectrum, but just to really dominate the nostrils and really, and almost every time you drink it, and it's quite moreish, but it is you can taste it, you can burp up those hop flavors, and it's you almost get a second enjoyment of flavor when you drink it, just because, there is a huge amount of hops that went into there. We actually used a couple others. We used some Big Secret and a little bit of Brew One in there as well, but obviously Galaxy being the, more than 70% of the percentage of the grist, the hop makeup.
Lindsay, what did you get when you tasted this beer?
Yeah, so initially I got just a lot of juicy apricot, white peach, some vanilla bean kind of was in there for me, and an unripe apricot as well up front. Bitter mandarin peel on the finish. For me, I found a little bit more bitter dankness than I expected when I started going in on this with food. And that's what I chose to highlight because I do think of, personally, I think of Galaxy as Pacific Pale Ale. And I liked seeing this different expression of it. It wasn't so dominantly, seeing a little bit more dankness, seeing a little bit more bitterness to it. That wasn't just like a tropical fruit bomb or like a stone fruit bomb was really appealing to me. that personally, like, yeah, like I think of Galaxy as strong with Pacific Pale, and in a lot of New England IPAs. So I really liked it with the apricot almond cream cheese. I also tried it with some apricot delights, and I was just trying to, initially I was trying to highlight the fruit, and what I found with the apricot almond cream cheese was just that it matched, once again, these flavors matched each other, and then it just finished on this quite like resinous, dank kind of palate without bitterness, because the cream cheese kind of cuts any bitterness that would be there, and it's just like this like a dinky, nice flavor in my mouth.
Yeah, so there was actually
So
the bitterness is almost it's a hop burn rather than than bitterness. It's and it was actually centrifuged out, no yeast into it, so it was actually it's almost just a true expression of dry hopping. Comes across as almost like a hop burn, but actually measurable for bitterness. It's actually low.
It's one of the conundrums we face now with these modern styles, and really heavily dry hopped with high alpha hops, and that tightrope we walk between burn versus lovely ISO alpha bitterness. You know, what's acceptable? How's the rest of the beer matrix going to carry what sort of perceived bitterness the dry hop brings? You've got all this lovely aroma. We've been talking a lot about the top notes of hop additions. But let's have a think about how to manage, and hopefully the brewers watching are also thinking about how do you manage those not negative outcomes of very high hop dose rates, but you have to be cognizant of them, and you have to manage them, because if you end up with nothing but burn, it's not going to be palatable. And so, I think you've walked a really fine line here, and in the technical execution of the perceived bitterness to balance the otherwise pretty big and robust flavours that are going on here, and it's all dry hop derived perceived bitterness. That's quite an achievement. And
I think
I've never made a beer like that.
I think booze lifted just a little bit next time. We may have just given that a little bit more balance. But look, we're pretty bloody happy with how it turned out, and it's not very often we get to partner with our good friends and do events like this. I'm
glad we managed to get you on and hear you talk about Galaxy hops. Congratulations on the beer, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure. And thank you everyone for this. This is what a fun experience to be involved in, and everyone keep up the good work.
Thanks, Keelan. That's Keelan Vaughan. We might introduce Topaz. OJ, maybe talk us through Topaz.
Absolutely. So Topaz, in contrast to this modern, wave of releases out of our breeding program, Topaz was actually 100% selected as a commodity alpha hop. Now, if I go back in my memories here, I'm pretty sure it was our highest per hectare alpha yield of our varieties at the time. Released in the mid 80s. I'm going back in the memory banks here. Someone will correct me, but I can absolutely say that it was well ahead of any intention to pursue, European aroma analogues or this modern flavour interpretation that we're out there with now with Galaxy Eclipse and Vic, for instance. So it really has had a long career, and Topaz found a lot of success in the global alpha market. It was a mainstay of HPA's varieties until being rediscovered as something that offered some difference in our modern portfolio of hops. So it's kind of a nice counterpoint to the story that's common through the other varieties we've got on the market at the moment, which are modern releases, specifically selected, impacting beer, et cetera, et cetera. Topaz offers quite a different array of flavours. It can be earthy and herbal, and it's got this elusive, vapor thin, lychee note that when you see that harnessed, it is just a delight. And so it's always had a lot of merit in my mind, and the role in the portfolio is really important. So both this both this beer from Newstead and the next one coming 7 Mile, I just thought were absolutely smashing beers.
Lindsay, I've had a lot of beers with a lot of potato chips, but
Yeah.
never actually with a deliberate, conscious matching of them. Talk us through
That's sad. That's very sad.
the honey soy chicken crisps.
Yes. Yes. So I've had an infatuation with honey soy chicken crisps for a while, just because they're really hard to pair. They just go really weird with a lot of beers. Like I genuinely try to pair them with almost anything. I was absolutely stoked when this one really worked out, because so normally with the honey soy chicken crisps, you have this sweetness and you have this like chicken salt flavor and you have this like umami soy, and it just clashes with anything that's going on in the beer. It tends to completely eliminate any fruit characteristics. But I found that it brought out a lot of like lychee and a lot of clove kind of thing happening in this one. But it also, like, the sweetness, the honey, the soy kind of like died down in the chips, and the honey kind of elevated in the chips. It's an incredible pairing. You should pair all beers with chips.
To date, I have, but it tends to be salt.
There's no many flavors you can get from it. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and a football game or some form of sport tends to be involved as well. But this is when I'm actually going to sit down and give a much more professional study to it, because I'm really looking forward to trying this. I didn't have the chips with me, but that will be the one that I hunt out tonight.
Please let me know. Okay.
I love your description. I love your description of the the umami and the soy, and it just seems to just smash everything to bits, and it doesn't work. I'm just like, I'm listening to that thing, and that's not going to work until you actually get it going together, and it's good.
Does it work? Is it good?
That's why,
so some I'm quite stressed about revisiting them, because some of them I don't have, because it took me 2 cans to figure it out, and after doing these.
I come up with all my best ideas after a couple of cans.
Was I just a little bit, a few drinks in, or is it actually a good pairing?
I admire your commitment and your professionalism.
Oof. Oof.
We will come back. I think we might have Marcus back. Oh, we do have Marcus. Marcus, welcome back. Thank you for joining us, obviously, on your phone.
Yes.
Now, Marcus, talk us through your use of, you probably heard OJ talking about Topaz, that it wasn't one of the flavour varieties that was bred for that, but it's been rediscovered. What was your approach to using Topaz, and how did you come up with the strong pale ale?
Well, I think historically for me as a brewer, it goes back to when I started working with Thunder Road. We did a lot of development work at Ballarat Uni using their brewing system. And we threw Topaz in as a joke. It was not a particularly fashionable hop, 10 or 15 years ago. And we put it in, and we had amazing results using it as a whirlpool hop. And the texture from it's unbelievably unique.
How does that make you feel, OJ, hearing? But then again, I guess that's the serendipity of the moment. That it sounds like that's the story of Topaz being rediscovered, even if a little ironically at first.
I empathise with Topaz quite strongly, that it wasn't fashionable 15 years ago, and it wasn't fashionable today, and I really feel it. And but I think the really important thing I take out of what Marcus has got to say is that its impact is quite unique, and that for me, in what we do in this provision of building blocks of flavour and trying to provision diversity into brewers to create flavour, difference has a really high score for me. Let's talk about it like that. It is different. Acceptability or preference or whatever is a bit subjective, but I think it does make wonderful flavours, and they're different from our other lineups. And probably this one I think is probably a bit different from most things that are available, even from other growing regions. So, a pretty cool hop.
It's very hard not to. It has many exciting features, and I think in the last couple of years that's just developed, and I started using it at Newstead. Some of those more vibrant and subtle aromatics have come up, such as the lychee, but it's still very heavily a textural hop, and I think you can identify it by that very unique texture, that density that it has, that is like nothing else.
OJ raised a really interesting point about uniqueness and having a point of difference on the shelves. Is that something that a hop like Topaz can bring to a beer when, with 600 plus breweries in the country, all targeting similar styles? Does a hop like Topaz let you have a uniqueness to a take on a style?
I mean, potentially I'll get sued for saying this, but the main hop flavour in Brunswick Bitter that Thunder Road used to make or still makes is Topaz. It's a very old school flavour that just gives something that nothing else does, and it's very fulfilling. In particular, in a dry beer, it brings some of the texture back.
We had a talk before about lagers and the use of hops in lagers. Is Topaz a hop that you think could lend itself to that, or would it be more the heavier ale style hop?
I think there's scope for both opportunities. We actually, when first approached by HBA, our first claim was potentially as a lager, and particularly a drier lager that was maybe Helles style, where the hop really got to showcase itself quite strongly. And then as obviously the range of the beers that were in the pack kind of extended and were developed, it was felt, and we worked towards this as well, that the strong pale ale, that kind of Sierra Nevada / Terrapin rye pale ale, was very much the vibe we were going to be looking for. So still some dryness and some spiciness to offset the density of the Topaz hop as the feature.
Have you tried it with the honey soy chicken crisps yet?
I haven't had the pleasure. The food match that I nominated was a middle of the road banh mi with some spicy chili, and that works particularly well. It's, some acid and some spice and some density there. So no, I haven't had the pleasure of it with those chips.
So when you say middle of the road banh mi, that's not the brand name. That's a literal middle of the road banh mi. Nothing too distinctive about the flavors.
We found ourselves actually doing some development work on this and looking at tank samples when we got it into fermenter, and there's a place that's 20 meters away that sells those things, and my production manager was eating one as he tasted the tank sample and thought it was the best thing he'd ever had in his life.
It sounds like serendipity for the win with pairings out of this. You said that you used it about 15 years ago as a joke. Have you used it in many beer styles since then?
I haven't necessarily had access to it. The high alpha makes it quite challenging. I think it's definitely something that's developed some more flavor-forward characteristics over time. I think it might have even been older than the 1980s reference that Owen mentioned, but I'm happy to be corrected. I think it came out of that kind of alpha extraction program just a touch earlier. It's definitely, whichever way it's going now, it's definitely has the heaviness, but also the arc of subtlety just to one side of it that's made it new. I haven't used it that much, to be honest. This was the first time we use it in one of our IPAs, and it's very much a supporting role. I haven't used it so forward as I've done here with the Hidden Gem for a while.
You mentioned that you brewed with Thunder Road, and you're now in Brisbane brewing at Newstead. But between those two bookends, you spent time in the US. How did you find US hops? Did you use US hops in the beers you were brewing did you use Australian hops in the beers that you were brewing in the US?
I did use quite a lot of Australian hops, and through my connections at Thunder Road, we did kind of some importing of the stuff that was excess to them at the time. So I specifically made a beer called Drop Bear that was a pale barley wine that was very galaxy forward. When I was working in the States, we were very conscious of obviously the proprietary brands being huge, but also the location where I was in Western Pennsylvania, trying to access Michigan hops and some of the lesser known hops that weren't proprietary. So things like cluster and cascades, and some other things like that. Zaza, I think, was in the mix as well. Trying to use those kind of more Middle America hops to get some definition.
But do the Australian hops have that distinctiveness when you use them in the beer over, the US hops?
Oh, look, very much so. And with the beer that I made specifically was the 9% pale barley wine, drop beer. That was Galaxy all over, but it's a very different manifestation I've found with the higher alcohol content of the beer, and it tends to have much more of a kind of canned pineapple, a softened tropical vibe as opposed to the vibrancy of something like Pacific Ale. And that worked very well for us in the market, in particular, obviously having an Australian brewer behind the wheel.
Oh,
It's something we've
mate,
talked
thank
about
you
a
very
bit
much
today, isn't it? That different expression depending on your setting. It's quite fascinating for bringing hop personalities to life.
So slightly getting towards the end of its life, Galaxy with a 9% beer and its canned pineapple expression quite categorically.
Good.
Wonderful. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for now. Just a flood update. Are you guys back to brewing at Newstead?
We're just back. We've recommissioned the plant about 3 weeks ago, and it's still kind of fixed two things. One thing breaks. But we actually packaged our first beer today that we've put through all of the process on site at Newstead. So wort production, fermentation, and packaging. We put out a coastal ale today that was the first one through that process in its entirety. So we're pretty happy. It's actually a good coincidence of timings.
Oh, that's great. 10 months after the flood, it's good to have you back and brewing on the scene up there.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you, Matt.
And mate, thank you so much for joining us.
Easy. All right. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
But we're staying in the Northern Rivers, and I think we've got Matt Wilson, who's the head brewer at 7 Mile. Talk to us about, did you catch the chat we had a little bit earlier with Marcus about Topaz?
I did catch that.
Was it a hop that you had used before?
We do use it in our brewery for two of our beers, actually, but generally not use it in this. We usually use it as a bittering addition just because of its alpha content. And I do like its softness that it provides as a bittering hop over some other, I guess, higher alpha Australian hops. I find it can be just a little bit maybe grassy or just a little bit on the bitey side, whereas this is more of that stone fruit roundness to the bitterness. So typically I've selected it for that, and it's probably, I guess, maybe what it was originally even bred for, I would think. Whereas, yeah, I guess more recently, some of these other qualities have been identified in it.
So you've chosen an American wheat ale to showcase it in. What was the decision process there?
When Simeon first sort of spoke to me from HPA about styles, I mean, a lot of people and a lot of brewers, I guess, are going to say whenever someone says, "Oh, let's do basically a hop trial, and let's see what you can do with this hop." The first instinct is, "Oh, let's just do a pale ale then, and sort of let this hop speak for itself. Let's just put in a nice pale body, some nice sort of balanced additions, and really see what this hop can do." That's not very exciting, though, obviously. So professionally, we've never brewed an American wheat beer before. It's a style that I've always quite liked. It's a style I don't think many people do, and it's something I'd had on some trips to San Diego and things like that, where I always found them quite refreshing in a similar climate to what we're enjoying right now. So yeah, I thought I'd give it a crack. I've never made one, so I thought, why not? Now's the time.
So describe the style to me. Describe the base style as a general flavour profile.
Yeah, so I mean, like a lot of beers, there's a little bit of leeway either side of any style. But for me, what an American, I guess, wheat should be is a nice clean ferment. You shouldn't be getting any of those other Weizen characteristics that you might get from a German or other European style of wheat. So the wheat malt itself is quite clean ferment. If anything, like the way I've sort of spoken to some people in the brewery about it that have asked, some punters that have asked about it. It's kind of like the grandfather of hazy pale in a little way. That wheat adds that nice softness to it, a little bit of extra protein. You do get a tiny little bit of haze, but obviously it's not the intention. It's just a byproduct of, I guess, trying to make a protein-heavy beer. But at the end of the day, they should just be nice, refreshing, sort of cruisy beers. But yeah, they're certainly not flying off the shelves generally at your local bottle shop. You don't really see them around too much.
And what did Topaz bring to that base style?
I guess for me, that was why I first sort of went for it. I personally get, when we've used it in the past, I get a bit more of that stone fruit character, which is why we've identified its use for hot side previously. So I liked that about it, and sort of reading the brief and also getting a little bit of lychee and stuff. I sort of went, okay, let's just sort of go for that fruit forward style, but maybe some of the subtleties and nuance of it that you maybe are going to lose when you start hitting it pretty hard, like an Australian IPA sort of style. I've had it before as an Australian IPA, and I've used it before as an Australian IPA hop, and it is it's bold. It can be bold if you really want it to be and let it be. So instead of sort of going down that tried and true path we've already taken Topaz down, I wanted to see what we can sort of capture with maybe some of the more subtleties of this hop. And yeah, for me, just a nice little bit of apricot, a little bit of stone fruit. I definitely do get lychee. We did notice there was quite a bit of, there was a little bit of, I guess, batch variance and lot variance for us. We tried 3 different lots before we ended up identifying, or batches before we ended up identifying which one we were actually going to go with for this brew. So we had some 2020, some 2021, and then, or I think we had 2 different lots from 2021, and we sort of just did some rub and sniffs, and we actually did 2 different pilot brews as well to see how this turned out. And it's pretty special for us. We've never ever done pilot brews before with beers. We normally just do one and done and just fire away at it, but we wanted to try to make sure we were giving this hop an honest chance at this style of beer.
And OJ, what do you think? Did they give it an honest chance? Topaz in an American wheat?
Very honest chance. When this one started coming up in the discourse around what we were going to, collaborate on and whatnot, I was really excited because I understand, as Matt was saying, about the sort of light, somewhat simple beer matrix that the American wheat is. But what a platform to showcase a hop in, and we've touched on this a couple of times now. Dose rate and the other elements of the beer matrix can really affect the expression of the hop. And I thought that this gave us the highest possible chance of capturing that elusive lychee character, and I do get that in this beer. So I'm stoked with it. I really enjoy this beer. It's delivered, Matt, well done. It's delivered exactly what I wanted it to, so that's excellent, because it does give that little touch of lychee in there, and I think that's probably Topaz's defining difference in this sea of citrus forward hops that are available on the market nowadays.
Lindsay, what stood out for you?
Well, one, American wheats are my absolute favorite style as someone who originally comes from Missouri. So I Boulevard Unfiltered American wheat is what I grew up on, and it is my favorite style in the world. And no, there are not enough of them, and that's all I say. Everyone should make them. It was really fun to see this. I'm not super familiar with this hop. I don't think I've ever used it. And the lychee and the delicateness of this beer, and the way it's able to present itself in a very soft way is super fun. So going back to wheat beers are great with lemon slices. So an American wheat beer, Boulevard wheat beer in the States, you always put a lemon on the side of it. So I didn't know that Hefeweizens shouldn't have lemon on it when I started drinking German Hefeweizens. I just drank wheat beers with lemon. That's what I knew. And so with this, I really wanted to add just a little bit of acidity to see what it would do. And that's kind of where the goat's cheese came into play. Goat's cheese is a little more acidic. It's also still quite soft and delicate, whereas the beer is soft and delicate. You don't really want to overwhelm the beer or any of the flavors that are in it. And I just thought that the goat's cheese brought out a really nice lychee character that's just hanging out there, just like real clean. It is also excellent with the lemon bar as well. So, fun fact. Yeah.
There you go. So you can mix and match. Well, Matt Wilson, thank you very much for joining us. Sorry for the technical gremlins that plagued us just as you were coming on, and congratulations on your Pizzazz of Topaz American Wheat Ale featuring Topaz.
Thank you very much. That's nerve-wracking knowing that Lindsay's, I guess, sounds like one of the world experts on American wheat, and that's my first crack, so it's good. She at least enjoyed it.
So it sounds like you've got
Thank you.
2 thumbs up there. So, mate, congratulations and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Now, OJ, moving to our last proprietary hop that we're trying today, Vic Secret. Talk us through Vic Secret and the origins of that hop.
Yeah, Vic is our number 2 hop by volume off our farms. Sits behind Galaxy as our second biggest. It's really, sometimes the trajectory of a hop is a slow burn, and this hop Vic was released in the shadow of Galaxy's really rapid uptake, and the awareness and the focus and all the hype was around Galaxy, and Vic was simmering away in the background, and in more recent years, brewers have sort of organically discovered the impact that Vic can make in their beers, and I kind of feel like it's kind of grassroots. Like, we haven't been out there. I know hopefully the brewers will back me up on this. We haven't been out there actively like push on Vic. People are discovering it and enjoying the impact that it has, and they're the ones pulling it out of us. They're the ones who are saying, this mix I've got, this hop grist, this Vic is making a big difference. We're gonna bring it on full time. So I think Vic is super grunty, high impact hop. Sort of in its citrus space, it's leading with some pineapple. It's fit for purpose in that West Coast IPA, and anytime you want to even drift into thinking about dank, Vic Secret can deliver that in spades. So it's got some versatility. It's very robust, and this isn't the first time that the team at Deeds have worked with us on Vic Secret. So I look forward to hearing a bit of the background on this particular beer, because this is another cracker that I love drinking.
Well, speaking of hearing about the background of this one, we've got Deeds Brewing up next with the Vic's Best West Coast IPA featuring Vic Secret, and we have Usher, the production brewer. Thank you for joining us, Emily.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Well, Emily, tell us a little bit about, we've got Vic's Secret, and it's a West Coast IPA. Tell me a little bit about the beer that you guys have come up with for the hop pack.
Yeah, so it's a West Coast IPA. It's 6.8% ABV. We went for a smash, so single malt, single hop approach, which, is a little bit unusual for some of our normal Deeds recipes. We just went with under-modified Pilsner for the base malt. We use that in quite a lot of our limited releases. We find it adds a good bit of foam and body because of the proteins. And then we kind of went to town on the hops. So we did mash hops, we did first wort hops, we did some Whirlpool additions, and we did a dry hop as well. So we really wanted to bring out that Vic Secret because it has such a strong flavour and aroma, and just add a bit more kind of complexity and layering into it, really.
And did the single malt allow that to stand out a little bit more? The malt was there really as a trophy stand for the hops, more than being a big part of the flavour?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is an under-modified Pilsner, so the colour has also come out quite light. But I think that, yeah, as you said, a bit of a platform, lighter flavour, and just really allow the hops to shine.
Is that in keeping with your West Coast IPA has been all over the map? You know, a lot of the beers that are being called West Coast IPAs. Was that your understanding of what a West Coast IPA was? You know, quite pale with the hops really coming forward much more than the malt.
I think we've done a couple of variations in general with West Coast IPAs. Sometimes having them a little bit darker, adding some kind of slightly darker malts to bring out a bit more colour. But in general, I think we've done a more similar pattern of keeping it basic malt profile and then adding additional layers. And we tend to do a lot of like first wort hops and whirlpool additions to bring out that kind of layering and the bitterness, really.
And tell me about Vic Secret. Is it a hop that you use a lot, or was this something really special to get to use it in this West Coast IPA?
So we love Vic Secret. We use it in our halftime pale ale alongside some other hops. So yeah, we're kind of used to using it. It's great as whirlpool addition, dry hop addition. I think we tend to use it kind of with citrus, some other things to kind of make it a little bit brighter because it is quite piney. It's got lovely like sticky pineapple notes, but as a whole, it is quite resinous and piney, so it tends to need another little hop to kind of lift it up, really.
And sorry, I'll chop this bit out. Is it a hop that lends itself well to a single hop beer, or you did mention that you use it with other hops, but how did you find it when you used it as a single hop in this instance?
I think in this instance, it turned out really well. I think it is suited to kind of pale ales, IPAs, maybe even a porter where it has got that bitterness. And if you use it quite a bit, it does shine. I think for a West Coast, it was perfect to use by itself. But yeah, I guess in other styles and other pale ales in general, we do use it with others.
And how did it come out? Obviously, brewers go into something like this with a vision of what they want. How was the end result as compared to the vision that you had for it?
I think it was pretty aligned with our vision. I think visually it looked great. It was tasting fantastic. The IBUs on it were around 45, but I think you can really taste that bitterness. It tasted it's more. I think that's because we, did so many layering of the hop additions. And I think the final product, really resonates as a nice kind of dank, piney, maybe a little bit nectarine in there, West Coast IPA. Yeah, we're really happy with it.
A full fruit bowl of flavour, you say, in the ingredients. And of course, the recipe is available for anyone that tried it, that wanted to use it. You can find the website on the HPA website, and there will be a link below to this. Anything else you want to say? What's your next use of Vic Secret going to be? Can you tell us that now?
It's a great question. I'm not sure I've got anything in the pipeline, but I'm sure we'll be using it in a limited IPA soon. It's definitely always in there. So yeah, watch out.
Wonderful. Emily Usher, thank you very much for joining us to talk about HPA's hops.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Let's get on to the last beers featuring Vic Secret, and we're heading down to Tasmania. Maybe it's the Tasmanian connection, OJ. And we're speaking to Cornell, who's the head brewer at Shanks Brewery down there. Are you there with us, Cornell? Thank you for joining us. Now, Vic Secret, talk us through the Big Rooster New World Lager.
We use Vic quite extensively in a bunch of different beers. We love it. It's a really versatile hop. It's high impact, but it's usually kind of plays for us a bit of a supporting role. We tend to use it in combination with other things to just accentuate that sort of pine and like tropical, but it's not tropical like a lot of the big hitting tropical hops. It's got a very, it's sort of almost, I don't know, it's hard to say, but this is going to sound weird, but it's subtle big. Like it's got a lot of impact, but it doesn't have a distinctive, for me anyway, like kind of an obvious fruit flavor of what you'd pick. You can get pineapple out of it. You can get a lot of other things, but we tend to use it in combination with other things. So this was a bit of an experiment for us. when OJ asked us to brew a beer for this, and said, you got Vic Secret. We were like, awesome, we love it, we use it anyway. And then he said, we've already got a lot of IPA, a lot of big hoppy beers, and so don't do an IPA, which is made it more difficult. And it was his suggestion to just do something completely left field. We don't brew a lot of lagers really, and he said, try doing something different like a lager and see what it does in a lager. So this beer was all about experimentation. Like it wasn't it was very much a kind of seat of the pants kind of brew. Like, let's brew a lager, put Vic in it, play with a new product that they're releasing in terms of a Vic derived product, and see what that does. So a bit of experimentation.
And what did it reveal? If it was not an unhappy marriage, but certainly one that you wouldn't have chosen, what did it reveal itself through that experimentation? What did you find out about it?
Well, I think probably the most interesting thing about this beer is that we used Spectrum, which is a new product for HPA. I think relatively, I don't know how long it's been around, certainly new for us. And certainly from a lot of the technical aspects of basically another new modern hop extract product. And I'm not sure exactly how it differs from the other extracts out there, but we've used a few of those products over time. This one is by far the most interesting so far. Like its properties are so different from all the other extracts we've used. And there are so many different ways you could choose to use it. It's so new that it's probably got applications in the kettle, in the whirlpool, probably early dry hop, late dry hop, potentially, bright tank. Like, there's sort of no real direction with it yet. It's very much a bit of a find your own path kind of thing. Like, the tech specs for it said you could use it here, you could use it there with success in these ways, and a bunch of breweries are starting to try it out. So for us, we weren't 100% sure whether we were going to use it. So we kind of brewed the beer as if it wasn't going to have it in there, and made a fairly clean, easy drinking lager, and then kind of hopped the hell out of it with dry hopped the hell out of it, mostly with Vic Secret, and ended up with a fairly punchy, hoppy, and then we kind of went, bugger it, let's try to use this product as well at the end. So we kind of already had a very hoppy lager, and then decided to add this into the mix at the end because it's sort of like, why not? Let's play. And it was a really super interesting experience using the Spectrum product, working out where to use it, how to dose it, the whole dosing process, working out how much impact it has. And it really is quite a strong product. Like, it's got a lot of punch to it. So we didn't put much in the end, but it really, like, the beer took a bit of a left turn at the point where we added that product. It really punched up the hop character. It really kind of lifted that Vic Secret, more so, I think, than would have happened if we just added more pellets at the time we added it, which was a very, very late extra post-dry hop addition with this stuff. So yeah, it was really interesting, and it really has made it quite a distinctive beer. Like, I think it's not like any lager I've tasted. So it's got that kind of Vic Secret profile, but it's really kind of flavorful and impactful, and it's not like your light, easy drinking kind of like everyday summer lager for me. It's quite a big beer.
OJ, just tell us a little bit more about the Spectrum, because I remember earlier on in this conversation, you said it was 8-1 in terms of the concentration.
Yeah, something along those lines, and it's really interesting to hear Cornell's reflection on that very small dose, very big impact, and that's that's along that line of more punch than you think. I think the benefits from these liquid products are pretty clear, right? They remove all that vegetative matter in the cold side. Beer recovery is maximised, but there is a cautionary tale in this that I think we need some experience in using them, and they're going to be fit for purpose and certain applications and whatnot. And so, I think I really appreciate Cornell's collaboration in this sense, because we learn a little bit about, beware making a beer, and then you can't just chuck stuff in. Like it's really considered, and we didn't necessarily know this, because this Vic Secret Spectrum
you certainly
is brand
can.
new. You can just chuck it in, but you might not know what happens. So this product is really quite new for us as well. Galaxy, Eclipse, Enigma, and Vic are all available in this dry hop specific Spectrum product. It is still a traditional CO2 extraction, but under quite different conditions, Cornell. And this answers your question about why it's so different to other liquid products you've tried. It is different. It is manufactured differently. There's some new tech in there, and in the way that the flavour components are extracted and then reblended back into the finished product. So it is different. It's very impactful. And I think just like releasing a new hop, I think with a bit of experience and trial, the uptake and the why of using a liquid product in the dry hop and cold side is going to be pretty clear, and it'll find homes in all sorts of breweries. It was a challenge that we accepted, didn't we, Cornell? Go and make a really hop forward lager, and the rest of the pack's full of hazies and double IPAs. So make sure it's like really banging. It's a really tough ask, and this beer certainly does not lack for hop character.
I was going to say it certainly, the experience of it, like what we've learnt from it, for me is really important. Like the experience, especially with the Spectrum. I mean, partly by highly hopping a lager with Vic as a thing in the first place was already a bit of an experiment for us. Like we'd only ever used it in ales, we'd only ever used it in sort of hop forward ales. And this before the Spectrum, we already had like I think 7 to 8 grams per litre of dry hop in there, because we weren't sure whether we were going to use the Spectrum. And at the end, we kind of just went, it's hoppy, it's there, it's good, but let's just try this new thing. Like we've got it, it's there, it's sitting there. We might as well like play with it. So we probably went a little bit overboard in putting that in there. It probably didn't need it. Like it was already a hoppy lager before we did it, but the scientist in me just couldn't resist this like glowing thing in the fridge that was sitting there, and it was free, so that was bonus. Let's have a bit of a play and
chuck it in.
But we were like, the funny thing is that we were careful. We did do dosing trials, and we did we thought we dosed on the low side. But its behaviour is just so different to everything else we've used that it really did kind of behave. Yeah, it was probably. There's 2 things I want to say about it that for other brewers to kind of learn, I guess. It looks very different to every other extract I've ever seen. It's dark brown, it's thick, it's gluggy. Now, sorry, a lot of the old school hop extracts look like that too, but this is just somehow a whole different beast. It's almost expect some little like hand to come out, It really does look as powerful as it is. And the other thing that it did that no other extract I've seen has ever done, and a lot of those old extracts were kind of primarily used for like kettle editions. So using it in the dry hop was a bit interesting. The other thing it did, and I mentioned this to OJ since, this beer was crystal clear before we added it. Like we'd find it. It was lagered for 6 weeks. It was crystal clear, and we only made 1,000 litres of beer. We added 50 mils of this stuff, and the haze you see in the can is literally since we added the Spectrum. So it's got something to it that is really like I don't know, kind of like concentrated liquid hop pellets. It's got kind of everything that a hop pellet's got in it, which is not what most extracts do. Mostly they're kind of telling you that the vegetal matter's removed, the other, all of these things are removed, and all you're getting is the oil and the flavour and the cool bits. This seems to sort of have a bit of everything in it. It seems to just be all the hop bits in there, which I wasn't expecting. So it was a real learning experience, and it's something that we're definitely going to play with again, and I think try it at different parts of the process and see where it sort of fits. Potentially even doing what we did with it in an ale without having already done a 7 gram per litre pellet dry hop beforehand, would give you a completely different beer. Like, we kind of push the envelope a little bit in terms of, making a beer already, then chucking this in at the end. It's kind of, maybe a little bit gung-ho, but it was fun, and I like beers that don't turn out the way we expect, because you learn something from it, especially when you're using a new product and a new technique or something like that. It's always fun, and then you kind of get to reiterate and play again. OJ, there was a lot to unpack in there. Is there anything that you wanted to address?
I'll jump back about 3 minutes, and that comment about just seeming like it brings all of the components, right? That's actually quite an important point. It's called spectrum, because we reckon it's got the full spectrum of flavour impact that hops bring, versus some of these other older school extract products, or products that are manufactured with molecular distillation to strip out certain components and only put certain components back into that thing that they're going to call cascade or whatever. This is actually not fractionated any further. It does represent as much as we can capture the full profile of a hop. And so, like Cornell, I think your sort of empirical observations align with what this product is setting out to achieve.
Lindsay, you're a brewer as well as a certified Cicerone. So if I bring you back into the conversation, have you used Vic Secret, and have you used a Spectrum?
So I've never used Vic's Secret cold side. I've only ever used it hot side Whirlpool. Never used Spectrum. We've never tried Spectrum. This beer was wild though. The pine. I think my first comment, which I write horrible tasty notes, was pine baby, pine baby. Whoa. So if you ever want to hire me to write tasty notes, let me know. It was straight up pine cone. Big piney boy. I would be interested to, I can't remember having anything with Spectrum in it recently, and I would be interested to see more stuff with it. Probably 100%.
And your match, we've gone cheese and crackers.
Yeah, well, not just cheese. It's very specific. So it's 24-month aged cheddar on a rich buttery cracker, and there's a reason for that, right? So you want a more aged cheddar, so that there's a little bit more acidity in there, right? And on a buttery cracker, because the salt, like a Ritz cracker, ideally, the salt and the butter will kind of cut through some of that bitterness just a little bit, and it just elevates the experience a little bit more.
Excellent. It's one of those great matches. Again, cheese. We could have matched almost all of these beers to find a cheese, but that aged sharp cheddar, it was just a really nice match to this one.
Yeah, really good.
So, Cornell, is there anything else you'd like to say about? You've said you'll be using Spectrum again and experimenting with it. Any thoughts about what styles you would be experimenting with?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously lends itself to playing in hoppier beers. It's such a strong kind of product that I think our next thing with it, straight away, as soon as we added it and tasted it, I went, next time Whirlpool some kind of IPA. For me, that's where we're completely different part of the process, different style of beer, see what it does there, and just kind of play around with it until we find the right sort of fit for it in our process to see what it does and how it behaves. Kind of like with everything in brewing, really, you got to play with it, and it is very, very, very new. So, yeah, I think there's a bit of the lovely thing about these sorts of products is brewers are kind of happy to sort of talk and share. So as more people use it, they kind of say, "Oh, how did you find it, and where did you use it, and what experience did you have with it?" And eventually, OJ's tech sheets will actually match reality, and they'll be useful in some way in terms of telling us
all things in good time, right? Don't let's not get to the end point straight away.
No, the spec sheet's like put anywhere between 1 and 3,000 grams per litre in any part of the process you see fit.
And you'll get some sort of flavour profile that starts with a C. I don't know, but it'll be crap.
Yeah, it'll definitely be hoppy in some fashion. Yeah.
Oh, mate, thank you so much for joining us, Cornell, and sharing the beer with us. And I think, as we bring this tasting to a close, I think collaboration and sharing is the thing that really has come out as brewers have very generously shared their recipes and brewing techniques with each of the hops that they've used across each of their beers. It's been a wonderful experience to be part of. So thank you very much for being part of it. Owen Johnson, anything you'd like to say before we bring the tasting to a close?
So the brewers are very complimentary of the teams behind the scenes here, and I've got to do the same with my team. Grace, Jamie, Elise, the engine room of the HPA team that puts this together. There's literally hundreds of moving parts trying to pull 12 collaborations together into a public-facing box that's retailed out to the public. So thank you to the team. Well done. Great job. Regan and Jamie, relax, mate.
Well, OJ, I think in addition to the people we have to thank, we also have to thank the team at Beer Cartel who managed to get this out around the country to all of the people that have joined us for the live stream tasting today.
Well done to the team there at Beer Cartel. Thanks again for their support and doing such a good job of their part of this thing to bring this mixed pack out to brewers around the country. So thank you to you guys.
And also thank you to our brewer certified Cicerone, beer educator, and former cheesemonger. I think, are you ever a former cheesemonger, Lindsay? Once a cheesemonger, always a cheesemonger?
Always. I mean, to be fair, I sometimes still pick up shifts at Maker and Monger for funsies. So mainly just so I can sample free cheese all day. Always once a cheesemonger, always a cheesemonger. HPA, thank you so much for actually putting together this pack, because as a brewer, as a Cicerone as well, like everything you're doing around the hops and getting to know the hops personalities and doing a pack where you get so many different beers from so many different brewers using, the same hop, you get to see those hops in different styles. It's such a cool thing to get. So that's something you don't get very often. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you. I enjoyed it too. It's great.
So good.
And also, Lindsay, as somebody who's passionate about beer and food, congratulations on the pairings and the originality you've brought to it in such flair. You've brought to it and made it very easy for us all to experiment with some very experimental beers.
Anytime. But also thanks to Tiff Waldron real quick, because when I had palate fatigue, she came over and helped me with the ones I was struggling with. So never alone. Your palate's never all being. But thank you.
And thank you also to HPA. Again, always trying to keep brewers informed about their products and about hop information generally, and using innovative ways like this that we can all sample together around the country and hear from the brewers that made it. So thank you to the team at HPA for putting that together. On this Friday afternoon, I hope you've all had a couple of great beers. I know there have been some very wonderful beers that we've tried this afternoon, and that you're going to enjoy some more over the weekend. And with that, cheers for a Friday evening, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks,
Matt. Good on you. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, OJ.